businesses reacted in part by leaving the United States, looking to find cheap places of producing somewhere else. That meant Americans lost their job, and so they began to work for less money. The wages start going down. Second, if American company couldn't find cheap labor abroad, there was the alternative. Bring the cheap labor here. And we explode our immigration to bring desperately poor people here to lower the wages. We have a women's liberation movement that takes thousands, millions of American women who worked in the house and they look for a job. You get the picture. A whole lot of factors came together, and I haven't exhausted them all, to make wages go down in the United States. Stagnate or go down. Productivity keeps going up. We know that it goes up because the last 30 years are the implantation of the computer, making it possible for each worker with benefit of computer to do much more than they could have done without one. Productivity rises, wages are flat. The difference is what the employer gets. The last 30 years have been a fantasy, as you're going to see, of employers' dreams come true. An unbelievable time in which the wages stay flat, but each year that you're paying the worker the same, you get more and more stuff to sell. Employers' profits go wild, and all the people who get their fingers on employers' profits, the professionals who sing the songs they like to hear, the shareholders who get a piece of the action of each company's profits, they're the ones who have a bonanza in the last 30 years. Fantastic time. The only thing more profitable than simply making the money off the worker whose wages are flat while he produces more are all the people who handle this exploding bundle of profits, who package it and repackage it and finance it and lend it and borrow it and invent new mechanisms. That's called the finance industry. Of course they went crazy. Every finance company, every bank, new kinds of banks, all kinds of banks, stumble all over themselves to get a hold of this. This immense pot of profits also made everybody else who could get their hands on it grab it before it disappeared. Executive salaries went nuts in the United States in the last 30 years. I understand from many Americans they've only discovered this fact in the last 30 days and are outraged by it, but it's 30 years old. It means the population was sleeping. Or maybe it just didn't matter. So long as you were getting your situation, who cares if they got 30, 60, 70, 80, 100, 200 million? What difference does it make? There's so much profit that we can all be at the trough. Capitalism always goes wild. We always have bubbles and booms under these circumstances. We open a new continent for capitalism, it goes crazy. It has a new invention, it goes crazy. The railroads did it, the electricity did it, nuclear energy did it. Whenever there's an opportunity like this, for whatever reason, capitalist competition produces a bubble that bursts. If you don't want a bubble that bursts, you got a problem with a system, because it has done it over and over again. What did the working class do? I'm more interested in that, being a socialist. What did the working class in America do? It had a problem. What was the problem? No rising wages. For a population committed to measuring each person's success by the amount of consumption they could afford. Measuring your meaningfulness in life, your standing, your prestige. Everything about you is measured in terms of consumption. What car, what neighborhood, what mall, etc. What happens to a population for 150 years that experiences rising consumption when the means they had always had to achieve it, rising wages, stop? Well, they can go through a trauma right then and there. We can't anymore. It's over. Most people don't do that. They found other ways. And two in particular I want to draw to your attention because of their effects. One, Americans undertook more work. That is, people took a second or third job. The number of hours per year worked by the average worker has risen about 20% since the 1970s. By comparison, in Germany, France, and Italy, for example, the number of hours worked per year per worker has dropped 20%. That's a stunning difference. American workers began to work to a level of exhaustion. Secondly, they sent more family members out to work. Women particularly went out to work. Retirees went back to work, and teenagers learned to love a job sooner than they had before. We got more people working. Did that solve the problem of American workers' rising consumption? No. Because it turned out that there were all kinds of costs associated to the fundamental exhaustion of the American worker and her family. The woman who goes out to work needs an outfit. In our society, she probably needs another car. The children who come back to work who go out to work have all kinds of needs that they discover out there in the world of work. And the family begins to fall apart in America. And that causes all kinds of other expenses. Daycare expenses, psychotherapy expenses, attempts to cope. We consume more drugs, legal and illegal, than any other population in the world. We have the highest rate of divorce. These are all signs of a household that is blowing apart. And so the costs neutralize the income. So it couldn't solve the problem of rising consumption. So they had to do the second great thing. The American working class began and went on the greatest binge of borrowing in the history of any working class in any country at any time, period. Stunning. And this created, for those who had made the profit, an even greater opportunity than flat wages had given them. The business community began to realize that they had a double whammy here going, a fantastic double opportunity. They could get the profits from flat wages and rising productivity, and then they could turn to the working class traumatized by an inability to have more consumption and make available to them the means for consuming more when you can't earn the money to pay for it. You borrow it. And so the profit earners lent the money to the workers to enable the workers to consume more, not by paying them rising wages, the previous 150 years, but by lending to them. Now try to think of yourself as an employer. Some of you are hoping, I'm sure, to get to that point, some point in your life. Here's a chance to jump forward and enjoy it beforehand, especially if you don't get there. You are now, let's get it from the employer point of view, you are now going to, instead of paying your worker a wage, you're going to lend him or her the money so that they have to pay it back to you with interest. Now there is something to be proud of as an American. You live in a system that makes you distraught about your consumption and then services your trauma by lending you money. They get you twice. They stop paying you wages and they substitute a loan for a wage. And you know, the American working class was a great borrower. The richest working class on earth. The American working class had accumulated collateral. It's the best thing your lender could want. Americans own their own homes. So you could lend to them in a way that no other working class could ever borrow, because they had no collateral. The American working class was the richest working class you could have chose to lend to. This is a real bonanza, a whole new continent of making money. Lend to the worker. So that the financial enterprises, reeling from the profit of rising productivity with flat wages, got even more excited, if it's possible, by the unending vistas of lending money to a working class. And they did. And it solved the problems. For a while, they could pay workers less and less, flat. And instead of that making the usual problem for capitalism, you know, capitalism's contradictions are legendary. Even if the legend is a little rusty for many of you, it's legendary, right? Every capitalist has an incentive to push the wages down. The collectivity of capitalists then complains, because if the wages have been successfully pushed down by each one, then the workers don't have enough to buy the crap. Oh, gee, well, we got to give them more wages so they can buy the crap. Yeah, but if we give them more wages, the profits go down, and then we don't want to play anymore. So this is a problem. This is a problem, but don't worry about it. All of that works out. Capitalism is an engine of efficiency, profitability, prosperity, and economic growth. We all know that. So in this system, we produced magic.